everyone, welcome to our second roundtable. We're going to talk about circular economy and the role of consumers. Before we start, let's go through some housekeeping. Please keep your mics off unless you're a speaker. If you want, turn your videos on. We'll like to see who's behind these black screens. And we're recording the session that will be available later today or tomorrow, hopefully, on YouTube for you to share with anyone that might be interested in circular economy. And at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session that you are more than welcome to ask questions to our three amazing speakers. To those that just join, let me introduce you, Lynn Wilson. She's a consultant, but right now she's full-time PhD at the University of Glasgow. We got Henning Gillberg joining from Sweden, Malmo. He's the founder of Repamera and Repair and Service startup and the founder of Circular Monday. And we got Kavita. She's a writer, speaker, ambassador for many charities, and the founder of 2 sustainable brands. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have 3 completely different voices in this roundtable. We got 2 business owners, but 2 different businesses. And then we got Lynn with a great experience in consultancy and in academia. So we would like to bring to the table the 3 different, or maybe not that different, understandings of what circular economy is. So Lynn, would you like to start?
Thank you. So, well, first of all, happy Earth Day. I like to think of it as a day to celebrate the Earth, but not with cards and party streamers, but with our senses, particularly having a good look about what's around us and asking, is this it? Is this the best we can do? And the circular economy is billed as the next thing to help us to do better, to help us to regenerate our world. But at the moment, we're still at the stage with the circular economy mantra of regenerative by design. But as a designer, I originally trained as a textile and fashion designer, and now very early on in my career, decided not to go into the industry, that I could see, I'm quite old now, so I could see in the early 90s that the industry was rotten and I really didn't want to go there. And so I have to ask, in terms of regenerative design for who? And there is still a design culture of designing for consumers, not with consumers. And whilst we've seen the growth of industries such as service design and products made out of alternative materials, there is no closed loop yet, and we're nowhere near a closed loop. And we're still very much trying to retrofit a linear system. And so I have started by assuming, and I hope not incorrectly, that most people here today on the call are familiar with the principles of circular economy. So I really wanted to start quite provocatively by saying, as someone who started out in 2013 on the circular economy engagement strategy for the Scottish Government, I eventually by 2017 realised that it's not going to work if we keep doing things to people. So yeah, so in terms of where does the consumer enter the conversation, it needs to be at the centre. So Walter Stahl says, the granddaddy of the circular economy, he says that the circular economy starts with you, as in all of us. And so therefore, how do we start the conversation with us at the centre of the circular economy? Thank you.
Well, that connects perfectly what Henning did to start with his own business. He went to the customer and asked, hi, do you have any broken or garments that you would like to fix and use them again? And well, Henning, right now, it's been some years since you started. And what do you think it's circular economy and how did you approach it?
Yeah, exactly. I go into two things that Lynn said. One thing, she asked, what can we do? And I believe that mostly everything she said was correct, but that little part, I would like to ask, what could I do? So what could I do to create a more circular community? And the other thing is about she said consume. A good thing about, like, Lynn, what did you say about the consumer again? Sorry.
So I want to put the consumer at the center of the circular economy, but in actuality, Stahl actually calls us citizens rather than consumers. So I would say I want to put the citizen.
Yeah, now I remember. You said for consumer, not with consumer.
That's how the system is now. The system is for the consumer, but we need to make the system with the consumer.
Yeah, the prefix consume, chili con carne in Spanish, it's with. So when we think consume, maybe we should approach what you said, like with the consumer, and think of chili con carne. So consumer is someone you do something with. And then zoom, I don't know what that word means, but everyone has studied Latin.
I did study Latin, but I think it comes from a different way, but it's fine. And Kavita.
We don't know what that means yet. But we are on Zoom, and I will tell you about my startup. So in January 2017, I had two broken shirts, and I was about to visit my local tailor. And I thought, wait, yesterday I ordered food to my door. Shouldn't people be able to order tailor services to your door? Yeah, sure, you should. So I went home and I did a market research the same evening. And I asked, like you said, do you have broken or damaged clothes at home that you want to use again? And after a few hours, 500 people had answered the survey, and 80% said yes, I have broken or damaged clothes at home that I want to repair using them. And since then, the day after I started to bike around and pick up clothes in Malmö, I just used my Facebook, and I went with bike, picked up clothes and delivered it to local tailors. And since then I've been working with it, and I created an e-commerce, and I started to get shipments from all over Sweden to Malmö, and then I went to the local tailors. Then I could employ my own tailors. And now we get a chat here about classical Latin. Great, thank you, Kate. And then I employed more tailors, I bought in machines, and I created this repair factory. And now we have in every H&M store in all over Sweden, there is a Repamera bag. So from this small idea to a market survey, to a bike, to an e-commerce, to every H&M store in Sweden. So we have the system that enables an individual to take ideas to make it easier for the consumer to consume circular. I don't know, did that answer your question, Julia?
Yeah, it shows like how you approach the problem from the consumer instead from the business to the consumer. And we're going to the other side. Kavita, you have two fashion brands. One, it's sportswear. The other one, it's shoes. How do you approach circular economy, or how you plan? Because you're not fully circular now, but your plan is to become fully circular, isn't it?
Hi, yeah, I think it's amazing what you're doing, Henning, and nice to see you again, Lynn. But basically, when I broke away from the traditional, company that I was working for, the fashion company I was working for, I could see again a lot of like offhand how much the industry was, damaging our environment. And this was many years back. And yet I did start my own company. I could only start it after a certain number of years because I was quite ill for a while. Even though I wanted to do it then, about 7 years ago, I couldn't. So it did take me a while to sort of get to a level that I could start something. And I just wanted to show people that you can change the way that you produce and manufacture and design things by trying to bring in some forms of, dealing with the situations that, that were happening worldwide. So our activewear uses yarn that's made up from plastic cleanup. And, we wanted to sort of regenerate that into our product. And then our trainers are made from all vegan materials. So, even though we started them as they were, we are always learning, and we're always learning for new things. And, circular economy is something I'm really interested about, which is why I'm on this today. But one of the things that we did do was when we added our t-shirts onto our Reflexone brand, we sourced a company that was making circular economy t-shirts. So even though all of my products not circular economy, I feel that we are trying to evolve to try and get that. But there's a lot of barriers in it, and it's it is difficult for people to do it, because if you don't do it, it's it's a huge issue. And if you do try and do it as well, it's just getting over those barriers. So yeah, I think it is a discussion that does need to be opened up a lot more, and needs to be understood a lot more.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. What type of barriers are smaller businesses? Obviously, big corporations are trying to engage, let's say, with more sustainable practices, but at the same time, usually they get blame of greenwashing. And well, maybe they could do more, but small businesses that are trying to engage in more sustainable practices, what type of barriers face? Kavita, maybe you can share some of the barriers you faced.
Yeah, so I think one of the barriers that, well, I've had a few barriers that have sort of been difficult for me to do within my business. I think one of the first barriers was when we were trying to start the business up, our small business, we wanted to only buy in very small inventory, and a lot of companies, suppliers, especially overseas as well, they have an MOQ system that you have to adhere to. So it just made things a lot more difficult. But I was really not wanting to produce things that would be wasted or would, go into landfill. That was what I was trying to move away from. So we had to pay like double the price for some of the items, and I knew that I was paying double the price just to make sure that I wasn't buying too much of it as well. So there was a couple of things. So MOQ was a huge barrier, and also
what is that, MOQ?
So the minimum order quantity to buy the product, you have to buy so much yarn, you have to buy so much product. And because I didn't want to get into that and buy too much, I had to pay double for the products that I was producing. But that for me was more important than buying in something that was going to give me a bigger margin. So, it's just thinking about what you want to do as a business and how you want to portray yourself as a business. But like I said, you're always learning, and you're always, understanding new ways of doing things.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, I've been thinking a lot about the economical system, and I can use Sweden as an example. So the system is based on bigger quantity. So the bigger quantity, the easier it becomes. So, for example, taxation, it is in Sweden, it's taxated like if I create 10 euro per hour, I produce that as a tailor, for instance. I have to produce 20 euro per hour to pay the taxes. So people who are tailors, for instance, they have to double their efficiency to even become employed. And what happens then is that the taxation system isn't changing. So what happens instead is that the companies that have a big quantity and machines, they are the ones who will have the lowest prices on the market. And it will only, and the lower prices they have, the more customers, and the less small businesses and small enterprises we will have. So the whole, in my opinion, the whole economic system is based on, like, we have the same barriers for everyone, but they should be like lower taxation for smaller businesses, and then the bigger you get, the higher taxation.
Oh, completely. I think you're 100% right. And the thing is as well, you know, opening up these conversations and understanding more about trying to do the right thing. It's another thing as well that, you know, if you're paying double for something that you are trying to do better for, you then are not making that product accessible to, you know, the majority of people as well, because that's another thing as well. So we, you know, looked at our margins and we want to reduce as much as we could to be able to produce something that was accessible to, you know, our consumer. Because once you start trying to do all these different things and, you know, implementing these structures and implementing these checks and implementing, you know, the certificates that you need to get, your price just becomes higher and higher and higher. And then you end up having to sell it at a, you know, it's not accessible then. So yeah, there should be a system. There should be a system of, you know, the smaller the company, you know, to going up to bigger companies, because everyone's, you know, on the same playing field at the moment.
Yeah, and another thing is that I believe circular companies, mainly, like if you work with renting or sharing, repair and upcycle, or reuse and recycle, if you do something of that, you will have to do manual work. Like if you have if we start a shop where we rent out dresses, you have to take care of the customer, you have to wash the dress, and you have to hang them in order, and you have to have a system. So, and when Lynn comes in and says, "Hi, I want to rent a dress," you give the dress, and you take the time when she gives it back, and so on. So this is really difficult to automate all these steps. What happens instead is that, and repair as well, you can't have a machine that repairs jeans. So you have to have a tailor. Even if we want to have machines, we have to have a tailor. But I'm sorry, I forgot my point.
It's about making it easy though, isn't it? What you're saying is it's actually, you know, it's a lot of work, and trying to do it in the right way. It's about trying to make that process a bit easier for companies, a bit easier for the person who wants to, you know, make a difference. The t-shirts that we do, you can actually scan the barcode on the care label, and they will ask you just for your details, and then they'll help you with the process of returning that garment back to put it back into the system. But, you know, things like that, it's just thinking about how to make that much easier, not just for the consumer, but also for businesses as well. Like you just said about your machines.
Yeah, thank you.
Kavita.
And now I remember what I was into. Like, for instance, a big second-hand store versus H&M in Great Britain. The second-hand store takes in old garment, structure them, wash them, clean them, put them in order, and then sell them. But they have approximately the same price as H&M, although H&M is like machines in Bangladesh, import, tolls, and then, but still, the reason they are in the same price is because there is no like benefit to do the manual work. So if we decrease taxation for circular businesses, then it will be lower prices on like second-hand shops or tailors, and there will be an incitament for the customer to actually visit the second-hand shop instead.
Lynn, do you want to add? I watched you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Kavita, I think the challenge we have, and so for the last 8 years, Scotland has been working on the circular economy in terms of industry and small business and business startup. And that has meant having lots of support for a circular business model. But what's really challenging is if you've already set up a linear business model, it is really hard to suddenly change to be a circular business. And I just wanted to ask Kavita, when you were doing your research, did you think about, or I don't mean did you think, I mean, did you have the opportunity to research and to consider an alternative business model that was more circular? Or, because I think it's really interesting to listen to Henning, who's in Sweden, and Kavita, you're in England and I'm in Scotland, and we're all in quite different economic policy systems and different stages of the circular economy. So Kavita, could you tell me a little bit about how you chose a linear traditional business system?
I think, I mean, thank you for asking me that as well, because it's really important to understand the stepping stone of how we started our business. You know, everyone has different passions and everyone has different, you know, wants to make a change in different ways. You know, when I started looking into it, and I didn't have the opportunity to do circular fashion, it was something I learned along the way. So like I said, we're always learning. But at the time when I was really focused on what I wanted to do, it was more that we wanted to look at how could we help to combat the plastic pollution that was happening in the industry, and that was really our focus point on, you know, our brand. But as we introduce more products, and you're right, you can't start with a business in some way, it's very difficult to evolve and move it along. But what we can do is introduce, when we're introducing new items, to do it better every time. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. You know, we're always learning and making sure that we are, when we added in our t-shirts, which was at a later stage, we did find something that was circular economy. So I think that it's about understanding, you know, what we could do at that time, but then also how can we evolve going forward as well. But yeah, you know, there are a lot of barriers and there are a lot of learning curves that we have to get through. But you know, we will try and do something that's even better next time. So yeah, so that's why it was important for me to only buy in very, very small amounts when we started our business, because it's testing and understanding it and making sure that, is this the right thing? Should this be, you know, what we should do going forward? So yeah, I hope that's answered it, Lynn.
No, thanks. It's just, I think with where we're at with business right now, there is a huge difference between trying to be a linear sustainable business and trying to be a circular business, and both are really, really important. But I think in the circular economy conversation and moving the circular economy along, it's really important to have more of these discussions that are a lot more honest about what a circular economy actually is. So for example, if you, and we've had this discussion, Kavita, very respectfully about, unless you as the business take back the product, or like you said, that you have a supplier who takes back the product and you know that your product is not going to end up in landfill. So for example, when I am working with a business, the first question I always ask is, how do you know, hand on heart, that your product is not going to end up in landfill? And unless we can answer that question, then it's not a circular model. That doesn't mean, like yourself, that it's not an important business model, it's not a sustainable, a model that is working, like you say, towards a better system. But I think as a circular economy practitioner, it is really important to embed what that circularity, that closed loop actually is, so that we're all working towards the same thing and understanding where the barriers and the problems are. I think it's really interesting when you're talking about the MOQ, Kavita, and thinking, why is that a challenge? How do we break down these barriers that, or are these barriers to be broken? Is it more about we really need these small quantities because we're actually going to have a service system where it's one product rented out or extended or leased out to various clients? But then we come back to the same problem of design. How do we know that product is robust? How do we do our research there? Who funds that research? So in a business model, thinking about when you're starting up, and I'm sure that you put, and Henning, so many hours into researching your business, unpaid hours into researching your business model, but was it the right research?
And
I didn't put in that many hours, actually. I just like, at the end of the day, the customer pays what's best for them, and if it's better for them to repair jeans through us than to buy new, then they will pay us. So we didn't have to research, we just had to make it as convenient as the alternative to buy new. And then when they had the alternative, our circular alternative, more customers started to choose us, and the more that started to choose us, the better price we gave them, and now we started to get that big quantity advantages.
That might be, Henning, the difference in cultures. So consumption in the UK, it's, let's say it's a bit over the limits. Probably that also connects with how Sweden consume and the way fast fashion has entered the UK market. It's like mental. Actually, I think UK is one of the leading countries in fashion consumption, fast fashion consumption. And not only that, but the garments that are going to landfill in the UK, the amount, it's ridiculous. And actually, I wanted to see your views on how do you think this relationship with clothing and with circular economy affects the ultimate customer. So we got individuals that need to wear clothes because we're not allowed to walk naked around. But how can they engage with a more circular model and at the same time have a healthy relationship with clothing? Anyone? Maybe Lynn.
Thanks, Julia. So I see some questions in the chat that I just wanted to respond to from Anne. So we don't know what the monthly tonnage of textiles landfill is in the UK, but we know that the annual one, although this figure has been around for a long time, and RAP, the Waste Resource Action Programme, are updating it, but it's the average of 300,000 tonnes a year. So is landfilled in the UK. One of the key challenges that we have, and this again is quite a controversial point, is that we are the first country to have a charitable retail model in the world. So since 1947, we've had charity shops on our high streets, and those shops have then enabled, in the last 20 years, they've enabled people to buy as much as they liked in the knowledge that they could dump it on the charity shop. So that's made us the fourth biggest problematic consumer of fashion in Europe. However, Sweden, I think for a long time you incinerated most of your clothing, and so until you ran out. And so there are very different models again of policy and structure going on. And it's about addressing the whole, where are the problems, where are the challenges, and how are we allowing this to happen? And there was another question in the chat about how informed are our policymakers. And I attended an event the other night there at Hustings, because we're having national elections in the UK, and the MSPs and MPs were really informed and had done their research. And what they were really concerned about were overall systems like public procurement, something really, really challenging right now in terms of textiles. things like I'm involved in the British standard for face coverings and the European standard for face coverings that are becoming a major pollutant. And these are sort of small items that represent the broken system. What are we doing with procurement, with PPE and textile products that create a critical mass somewhere, but that do end up in landfill? So we have loads of opportunities and loads of issues, but a key issue for me is how do we reinvent the high street to have a circular model, given that right now we have this linear dumping ground of charity shops or recycling bins where you can go and just dump what you want and buy new. And I don't know that the pandemic has really changed anything. We know that it's stopped the system. We know that we can't do that at the moment. And what I have seen is at the meso level, at community level, I've seen people doing their own thing. So a lot more community Facebook pages popping up, people swapping, sharing, engaging in that way. And that's really exciting, but there's lots of questions around the formalization of that and making sure that consumers are safe, because there is a lot of legislation around clothing waste management.
And you want to add something? Sorry, Henning.
No, I really like the simplification, because it's not a simplification, it's the edge of it. To does it end up in landfill or not? And if the question is we don't know or yes, then it's not a circular business model. And at the end of the day, everything that is not a circular business model is in the sustainability field. And in my opinion, sustainability nowadays is only efficiency. Like when DHL are talking about becoming more sustainable, they are talking about becoming more efficient. And they've always been talking about becoming more efficient. Like everything we humans do is about becoming more efficient. So sustainability, in my opinion, is another word for efficiency. And efficiency combined with circularity is another thing. So I'm impressed by that simplification, because it tells the basics of it, in my opinion.
I mean, of course, you're right, Henning, and what you're doing in your business model is about circulating. It's about keeping product in circulation. And that is a key principle of the circular economy. How long do we keep a product in circulation? But at the end of the day, that product, there will be a point, particularly with clothing, with a malleable product like clothing that is has a finite lifetime and can be repaired and repaired and repaired. But then how much do we repair before we have to balance the dignity of a person, the humility of a person, and the repairs in their clothing? And we also have to ask, who's the repair system for and what's it for? And sorting out what different types of apparel, of garments, are we able to have in a circular system? And also, there's a lot of challenges around slow systems and fast systems. There's the Centre for Circular Design in the UK, Professor Rebecca Early and her team, and they really challenge cycles of circularity and speeds, and when we need fast cycles of clothing and when we need slow fashion, because slow fashion is not going to work for everything. Slow cycles are not going to work for everything. And sometimes we need those fast cycles. Sometimes we need polymers. Sometimes we are able to access natural fibers, but they are a finite commodity now. So it's how do we really unpack, in terms of a circular system, what it is that we need things to do and why. And I think we're not really at the point of those honest conversations yet, of the unsexy bits of the fashion industry, the heart of the matter. How do we make the supply chain work in reality, and what is it working for, and who is it working for? And I always keep coming back to this question of who is this for? Because we're perpetuating the industry. And if you're in the fashion industry, it's because you love that industry. If you've been in it, even although you can see the challenges, you probably still love fashion. But fashion is one part of the system that has been abstracted. And so it really needs, there's so much unpacking that needs done. And more of these honest conversations.
Yeah, and I think like rental and sharing services is a really good way of getting at it. Unnecessary consumption of new produced products, I think, is the main problem to solve. Like, not consumption itself, but unnecessary consumption when it could be an alternative that give the customer the same solution. So for instance, now everything is about electric vehicles. If we go away from garments, electric vehicles will be produced from every car producer and manufacturer in the world, like Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Toyota, Mazda, Kia, Tesla, and so on and so on and so on. But I haven't seen one car company so far that just says, come in with your old car, we will change it to an electric engine and we will rebuild it for 50,000. And then you can drive home again the same day or the next day.
So Henning, I don't drive and I don't know enough about cars, but what I do know about is the service system. And I know that if we look at the original service system of Rolls-Royce, powered by the hour, 1962, when they realized that when they created the new jet engine and they realized that they were going to run out of customers really fast. So what they were actually doing was selling the service of the engine rather than the plane. And so is it really about, less ownership and these service models where the consumer or the citizen doesn't have to have the burden of that vehicle, and they have a full service plan. And the thing about Rolls-Royce and Powered by the Hour is that they take back the engine whilst they're repairing an engine for the airline. They are giving another one in return. And these systems are quite standard practice in the vehicle industry. And so I think it's like, how do we learn from that model in the fashion industry? What do we learn from these older established models? And what can we take from that? So for example, we know that if you have a product like a winter coat that you want to rent out several times or lease out to several clients, needs to be completely reconstructed and redesigned to suit that customer, which is very different from undergarments, which we might want a service system which is a weekly undergarment service, disposable undergarments, but it's still a service system. We're still keeping those materials in use for as long as possible, but it's very different. You have one that's a fast cycle for hygiene. You have one that's a robust product to protect the outer layer of the client. So it's sort of thinking, what are the different resources and materials within that are needed to make the system work?
Well, I'm aware of time, and there are some questions popping in the chat. I think we should move to the Q&A session. We could stay talking and talking for hours, I think.
The same with consumer, you have to be involved. I think the same in debates, like the audience is involved. So
yeah, Emma, do you want to jump and state your question?
Emma Summer-Scales there.
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Well, I think I was just thinking, we need good quality products in the first place so that we have something that's worth repairing along or towards the end of its life. And it's just how we bring about that kind of cultural shift to sort of paying more per item to buy a better quality garment in the first place, away from the kind of disposable fast fashion model that we have now.
Yeah, And like the quality itself, in my opinion, isn't the problem. It is because if someone buys a expensive low quality product and they want to repair it because the jacket was expensive, then that's good, because then we can repair it here and it will last better than original. The problem, in my opinion, is it's so expensive to repair. And so the alternative is that you can always buy new, and when that is the only alternative, the fast fashion companies start to, they know that customers want lower prices, and how can we cut the prices? Because there is no alternative to consuming new. So I agree with you, but I think that the problem isn't the quality itself, because the quality itself will come when the alternative like is actually used by the customer. And for the alternative to repair to be used by the customer, it has to be cheaper to repair or more convenient to repair.
That's quite a task for repair to be cheaper than buying a fast fashion garment, isn't it? Is that?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's enormous.
And that's the taxation on circular business models should be eliminated, in my opinion. So if you have a repair shop in London, you can have it next to H&M. And if you have no taxation on the repair shop, but you have taxation on the consumption, then people will go and repair when they're on the way into H&M, like, fuck it, I go in and change the zipper here instead.
Henning, why would I repair a garment that cost me €5? Why would I not want to just wear it 5 times and then pop it back into a machine that reprocesses it for me, and I pull out a voucher and I get a new top? Why can't I have a 3D printed t-shirt that I download a pattern from the internet? I just go to H&M, I download, pop it in the machine, out comes a fabulous top. I selfie myself, I go out dancing Friday night, I selfie myself to death. I wake up on Saturday morning and I think, oh my God, I hate that. I take it straight back to H&M, pop it back through the machine and get something brand new. Maybe instead of a t-shirt, I get a brooch. That technology is available, and that's a really outrageous and potentially irresponsible suggestion I'm making there. But what I'm trying to illustrate is we have the technology, we have the opportunity to completely rethink what's going on. There are millions of young consumers out there who are consumers for the first time, who do not want to be deprived of fast fashion. Therefore, and I know that potentially Sweden is different culturally from the UK, but I'm thinking about the millions of young people in the UK who do not want to be deprived of fast fashion. Therefore, how do we work with that? And how do we bring technology and consumption together to work in the system?
Yeah, I do think we need the economic incitament for the customer. It has to be in the same level. I do think, as you say, like you have recycle machines for garment, that will become more and more popular because companies now have solved the technical issue. But at the end of the day, people also like to have relationships with their products, like minimalism. And so this is one of my favorite shirts. I wouldn't like to change this one, but I want to repair it with good quality. So yeah, I want to repair it, and I want to repair to be like a better alternative for me than to buy new. So if I repair it for 110 or 20 euro, then and I could buy a new one for 20 euro, then I will probably buy a new one. And it's about the taxation system, because the taxation is flat, so it's the same taxation for every type of company in Sweden. Is it the same? Like, is it difference between circular companies or linear companies?
Yeah, no, we don't have tax breaks for the circular economy in the UK. But are you suggesting, I mean, is it about really taxing these fast fashion businesses and not taxing business startup or SMEs? Is that what you're suggesting, that we need higher taxation on global business?
No, I'm against taxation on average, but I can say, to make it more neutral, the taxation could be as it is, but for circular companies is eradicated.
Mm.
Then it will become an incentive for the customer to actually, like, you have no.
But it's only an incentive if the system is there, that it's something they want. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to force a consumer into a slow system that they don't want and doesn't suit their lifestyle. And your customers, it suits their lifestyle, it suits you. If you can repair my gorgeous Harris tweed coat, which is a very slow fashion item, and be really grateful, but that's a certain space. It is not the whole of what's going on. And so it's sort of thinking about how do we, because it's becoming it is right now a very middle class issue, and we can all fall in love with our clothes and want them repaired, but does that help a family who can't afford these to invest in the items in the first place? And just for example, last year when we came out of lockdown on the 29th of June, I went up to the high street in Edinburgh to see the fast fashion outlets open. I was expecting a riot. What I found was, I found a man in the queue who was desperate to get into a very low value, high fashion store because he had 3 kids, age 10, 8 and 5, and he couldn't keep up with buying online supermarket clothing. He needed a system for his family. And so these are the societal challenges that are actually need to be addressed within the fashion system. How do we make the circular economy, how do we make fashion economical and work for the planet and people? But right now, the rhetoric is so two-dimensional in terms of this fast fashion consumer. But we haven't bottomed out who that fast fashion consumer is. We have an idea of who we think it is, but that's not
I don't
reality.
want to punish them. I don't want to punish anyone. I want to, like you said, like repairing is a slow alternative. Did I understand you right?
Repairing is the ultimate perfect alternative for the right product.
Yeah, but you said it's slow, like it takes time.
Oh, slow fashion? No. Like
Okay.
we're trying to force people into a slow fashion system that doesn't work for everybody.
And you talked about quality. So say, correct, you talked about quality. So if you buy a H&M jacket for 50 euro, probably the low quality will be in the seams and the zipper. If it breaks, the zipper you can change and the seams you can fix, and it will be stronger than original. It will be. We do it every day. We do better repair than it is original, but it has to be cheaper for the customer to change the zipper than to buy a new jacket. And that's not the case. In Sweden, it is because of taxation on labor and because of VAT, the same VAT on like every product, eradicate the VAT for services that is circular and eradicate the taxation on labor for circular business models. Then people will open tailor shops all over the place, and we'll have queues to people just repairing because it's much cheaper than buying a new jacket. I believe. Strongly.
That sounds amazing, and I really like your rationale. I think that's fantastic. I think that it's brilliant, but we have key challenges, particularly in the UK, with who's going to scale up all these tailors. We had a fantastic opportunity in 2004 in my own town in Edinburgh. We had an influx of immigrants from Eastern Europe. And what was amazing about them was they had just come from a fashion production industry when ours had died. And so they came with amazing skill, and they all set up, or a lot set up, garment repair stores throughout Edinburgh, because we didn't have those skills anymore. Our industry skills of repair died. We don't have it in our education system anymore. So
exactly,
how do we
it's
train
a part
people
of
up?
globalism, because in Sweden, here in Malmö, I live 1 kilometer from Rosengård, where Zlatan comes from, and it's mainly immigrants, and they are mainly like the biggest percentage of without work in Sweden is in that area, 1 kilometer from here. Whenever I put up an ad about I'm looking for a tailor, it is mainly people from that area that is applying for the job. The skills are there, but the skills aren't on the universities. It's from the craftsmen, and we need a system that enables craftsmen and university people to both be employed, and that's what I'm about. So to scale up, I will answer this short, and then we have a lot of questions. To scale it up, like I've been in a discussion with H&M for investment, for instance. When we have a system of repairing or whatever, the capitalist system will help that circular business model become efficient. And whatever capitalism is focusing on becomes really, really cheap. Right now, the capitalist system and the stock market is focusing on linear business models. Whenever people start to invest like billions into making machines and technical technical systems for circular models, then we will become really efficient and cheap to repair a jacket.
Okay, and the last question, super quick, because we got 2 minutes left. Who should be playing the leading roles in implementing sustainable practices or circular practices in the supply chain? That's from Marcet, I think it's pronounced.
Who would be play the leading roles? I believe the individual.
Lynn, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Henning took the words out of my mouth there. I think it's the individual. We have the power.
Yeah.
Well,
so if we all just go tomorrow and say lower the taxations for circular businesses, then we have a case. Marcet, we are on your team.
Thank you so much, Lynn, Henning. Thank you all the attendees. We hope you enjoyed the session. Tomorrow we will be talking about sustainability. We have so many speakers tomorrow. We hope you can join, and see you, if not tomorrow, next year.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Julia,
yeah.
I just want to say I can stay for a while and answer questions if anyone wants to stay, and if that's possible, I can stay.
Yeah, if anyone wants to stay, yeah, it's fine for me. Only Jen, I don't know how you time-wise.
Yeah, so if you have time to stay, I will stay 10-20 more minutes, and I can answer your questions. And Lynn, if you can stay, I would be honored as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to shoot just because I've got another meeting, but I think it'll keep recording, so maybe it can be the bonus feature.
Always the marketeer, Ollie.
Thank you, guys.
Hi.
I'll speak to you very soon.
Am I just allowed to say my question, please?
Yeah, of course.
Right. Thank you, Henning, for answering my question, like who should be playing the leading role. So in my opinion, I'm from Bangladesh. I have directly working experience as a factory merchandiser. Right now from the University of Manchester, having my PhD. So my question is, as we agree that individuals should play the responsible role, that's fine. But what I have seen, fashion industry, especially the upstream suppliers, are highly pressurized, and to some extent, power exercise happens there. And suppliers are highly driven by the brand or the retailers. So what is your, like H&M next, whatever you say. So whatever be their requirements, even I'm doing my PhD research on implementing sustainable practice. So from my investigation, so the suppliers are like almost 100%, they are bound to listen to the brand or retailer, whatever be their requirements. And some of the respondents says that when even many big brands or the not recognized brand, whatever the materials, whatever be the process technology, finishing technology they are offering, whether it could be the sustainable or unsustainable, the supplier are just producing them, sourcing them, managing them, manufacturing them, and then just exporting them. So even though if a manufacturer has the intention to be more sustainable, but because of some cost pressure or some other pressure like downward price pressure, so they cannot do that kind of truly sustainable practice. Given the main reason the brand or retailers are playing here the power exercise role.
I need to understand your question. Can you say simplify it and say it one more time, please?
Yeah, I mean, when we see the brand or retailers are exercising their power, okay, to the suppliers, so how the suppliers should be more proactive, especially with the downwards price pressure and the sustainable practice implementation, because sustainability implementation should not be free always.
How we decrease the power that the big quantity gives, is that?
No, the power, I mean, like whatever the requirements from buyer or brand or retailers, the supplier are just bound to follow that, manufacture the product accordingly, whether it could be sustainable or not.
I think he refers that many of the suppliers for big corporations like fast fashion retailers usually have to follow what they are asked to by those fashion retailers. So
right.
They impose qualities, they impose quantities, they impose everything, and the supplier feels forced to adapt to that, even if it's not sustainable.
Right.
Can I maybe?
Yeah, Lynn, go.
Mazid, can I ask about being membership and potentially the challenges around being a member of a global organization that supports suppliers in terms of supporting their rights and sustainability, such as the Apparel Coalition or another textile exchange or sdgs, one of the bodies that support suppliers to and protect them in the supply chain. Is that something that's accessible to you?
Yeah, they have been working successfully to some extent, but again, you know, if we consider the different capacity of supplier, like we have small, medium, and large size organization, and we are talking about only the well-recognized brand or retailer, but behind there's hundreds of unrecognized organization doing business, and from my observation, unsustainable practice happening there substantially as well.
So what do you think that we can do on this side in terms of working at a policy level and a global policy level to ensure that best practice is being monitored at your government level, at the government level of the companies trading with Bangladesh? How would you like to see that developed? How can the West support that? How can policy support you?
Well, from my experience and research investigation, of course, government to government policy making and strict resolution, of course, could be one solution. But again, as the suppliers are highly driven by the brand or retailers, and they should play the leading role, being more sustainable. And only then they can motivate the suppliers as well to be more sustainable. That is one aspect. And then, of course, suppliers has many kinds of limitation, like cost is number one from my investigation. And negative mindsets are not aware, like lack of education regarding the sustainability. This is number two, if I say. And these are the kind of things happening back in supply chain. Even though many suppliers are trying their level best to implement sustainable practice, but again, many are not capable in doing so. After Rana Plaza, if I point out case of Bangladesh, they have improved a lot. Right now, almost 144 green LEED certified factory in Bangladesh and around 500 factories in the pipeline of getting eco-friendly certification for their factory within the next 3 years. So they have been trying their level best to improve their sustainability. But again, in Bangladesh, we have around 5,000 textiles and garments factory. And the reality is that even the suppliers are trying their level best to implement sustainable practice, whether being the motivated some of the brand buyer or with the market trend, with the market pressure from the stakeholders. But mentally, suppliers are not satisfied at all. They are highly frustrated. For example, some of the green factories who do business with some of the well-recognized brand or retailers, and brand are saying that you are practicing sustainability, your factory is green factory, so the overall cost should have been reduced, so we cannot offer you more price. But the reality is that those who have established their green factories and trying to implement diverse kind of sustainable practice, some practice really requires extra cost. So that is the question. So who should be supporting the suppliers?
I think it needs to be a global effort.
Collaboration is a key issue. Even
wait, Marcet, Lynn was answering. Wait 1 second. What did you say, Lynn?
Sorry, I was saying it's not going to come from the industry. The industry is going to do the minimal requirement, global industry in the supply chain. They will, but therefore it needs to be an exerted effort, particularly from policy. I can only see enforcement by policy. Of course, what we do see, and since Rana Plaza, we see the global campaign Fashion Revolution really pushing and highlighting the issues in Bangladesh and other manufacturing countries. The other problem we see is that by highlighting and spotlighting Bangladesh, it pushes bad practice out to other global countries in the supply chain, such as the opportunities opening up in Myanmar and Vietnam. And so it is a real problem. And Mazid, I would love to hear more about your insights from Bangladesh. I think the more that we understand what the problem is, I think on this side of the supply chain, we don't understand how bad the situation is. We can read the daily papers, we can see the problems in Bangladesh, but we're still not having enough of this dialogue and working together to really address what, going back to Henning and I, going back to our point about it starts with the self, it starts with the individual, but the individual needs more information to make informed choices. And then the way we make informed choices is with our wallet, when we really then say, actually, unless you have more transparency, unless I know that it's best practice in Bangladesh, then I'm not going to buy from you. So it needs to be a concerted effort, but the more information we have from your side, the more informed and the more we can take assertive action. So I'd love to keep in touch with you and hear more about that.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. I agree with you. Yeah.
Helen. Oh, sorry, Henning, go.
No.
We got Helen Gillberg. She was one of our speakers last year. It's a dear friend of ours. Hi, Helen.
Hello, is that all right if I chip in?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Hi, and hello, Julia and Lynn, and everybody. But I just wanted to add, I really support the points that that Lynn and Mariella are making, and I think that was a key thing that I said last year, that we all need to take responsibility. But your conversation is also prompting me to remember lots of things from remembering from being in industry, that there are many incentives in the way that people work in industry that persuade them to behave in an unsustainable way. And I think there's a lot of hidden practices that go along with all the other things that could really make a significant difference. So for example, buyers would get share options as part of their financial package. and it's therefore their incentive to make sure that profitability increases each year. And those share options will mature some years ahead. So they've got to do that for some years before they will get a big profit back on it. However, what if you incentivize them differently and said, so the more sustainable we are, or the higher we go up some rankings or something like that in terms of sustainability, you'd suddenly get a much bigger sea change than us just as individual consumers making a difference there. But also that retailers will listen to consumers more perhaps than they would their own staff, in the same way that that might happen at universities, that if a couple of students complain about something, that will probably make more difference than a staff member pointing that out. I don't know if anyone else would agree. I've found that to sometimes be the case. So if you've got some comments from consumers, then that's boosting and getting through eventually, hopefully, to management for them to change. So I think that the pivotal area is management in the major retailers. And in the UK, this is so significant, and it is different to Sweden, and it's different to many of the European countries because of our emphasis on fast fashion more than any other place. I've never seen any country behave in the frankly appalling way that we do in the UK, as has been pointed out earlier. So it's just not quite the same sort of framework that we're used to here, and that's been fueled by Arcadia over the years, particularly, and then obviously by people like Primark and now Boohoo and ASOS to some extent. I think particularly Boohoo, and that's changed the way. But obviously companies like ASOS are going in a more sustainable direction to some extent. They're addressing it more than some other companies. So yeah, we all need to change it to some extent.
Yeah, and I do think the way internet, like before, we had like the TV channels and the media talked to us, like it was a pyramid, and at the top here was like the media moguls, and they talked to each and every individual, and they sat home and their TV and their newspaper, like, aha, all right. But since internet came, this pyramid became that everyone on the bottom started to be able to buzz with each other. And it talk about, did you get the information from the top? This doesn't seem right. And they start to criticize and build like movements together. And I do think it's the same way as like how information is moved and circulating from top to down is more like equal, thanks to internet, and like the customer's view can easily be get an input to the leading board of a big company.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that's the case. That is a really good point. So the opening up of those channels to be more two-directional rather than just sending that information to us. I think there is more consumer power now, and we therefore have the chance for hopefully management in retailers and brands in particular to listen to that.
Yeah, I would like to ask Emma, you asked me a question before, or you asked a question that I answered. Did you feel like you get the right, not the right answer, but okay answer, or did I slip away from what you were asking?
I can't remember, what was it?
About quality.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the whole thing is just fascinating, to be honest. And I suppose, yes, I think it's such an incredibly complex area that you know, you feel as though you're sort of grappling onto these points all the time. So yes, I think so. But I'm just really fascinated because I think it led us on to this sort of idea of overconsumption. And I'm really sort of still mulling over what Lynn said about this whole idea. You know, there's this constant narrative that we should be about overconsumption, we should be reducing consumption, we should encourage consumers. And I'm part of that. You know, I I teach workshops in visible mending and repair and all of these things. So I'm totally on board, and I research into sort of object histories and relationships with clothes and all of that. So, but you kind of just taken me a bit sort of off piste, if you like, really interestingly, because this idea that sort of actually this overconsumption isn't going away, and that the solutions perhaps some lie in sort of meeting those demands in a different way. Am I right in, you know, this whole kind of, you know, taking what you described earlier, Lynn, about taking a garment to, you know, be sort of recycled? I mean, that's just, I'm not sure I'd ever sort of really thought we were that close, or, you know, to that kind of model.
Yeah, that technology is available. That system could be implemented by the players if they wanted to. As I said, and I'm glad that you picked it up, because it is about thinking conceptually what's possible. I think I get frustrated because we're stuck in this slow fashion narrative of that's the only answer, but that doesn't work for society. And so it's about thinking what works for society. And I think, like people like yourself, and I'm a textile designer as well, and I love the history and the research, and that becomes a passion. And it's about how you channel that passion into thinking about, well, what's the alternatives and who is that alternative for? I just keep asking myself, who is sustainability for? Who is the circular economy for? We know it's a no-brainer. We know it's for the earth, but what does that mean? We know it's for the continuation of society, but for whose society? And we haven't really answered, like I ask that question every day. I don't have the answer. I am trying to raise the point, because we get stuck in our little sustainability bubbles, and we get stuck in our little creative bubbles, and we don't really look at the big picture.
See, I think for me, the question of that model raises, perhaps it solves one problem, but I just feel the whole of society, the mental health of society is being damaged by this whole insatiable desire for stuff, and it will impact if, you know, we can just kind of take a t-shirt to be kind of, you know, shredded through a machine and then made into it. Just kind of, oh god, it feels like the whole idea of relationships with things.
I guess the other side. Sorry to interrupt, but just to contextualize it, the other is how much stuff we have in our home, in our wardrobes, that we don't use. I mean, and I know that Helen was part of this, like RAP said 30% of the average wardrobe are worn. It's probably been 80% in lockdown. I know 10% worn on a weekly basis. So what's happening with all that other stuff? It's, for me, it goes back to text and design and consumption and boredom. And how do we recreate this world of get people excited about clothing, but not about ownership, about the experience? How do we make that sensorial experience of wearing clothing, whether it's just for a functional purpose or an aesthetic purpose? We have become so banal about clothing and so focused on the issue without using our creativity and saying, wait a minute, what is the problem here? Where are the resources? Henning, you're fantastic. You're working with all these post-consumer resources, but you're putting it back into the system. But there's loads of stuff in my wardrobe that isn't broken. It's just boring, or it was 5 years ago, or it's the wrong season. I have a whole wardrobe full of summer clothes. I live in Scotland, you know. So what is going on? Like, my participants in my research are working seasonally. You know, they're putting half their wardrobe away for 80% of the year, because next summer they might go on holiday to hot climates. Well, you know, why can't you just have a suitcase of clothing that you rent for your holiday? It's got everything in it. And then at the end of the day, you bring it back and off you go. And then you don't have the hassle of storage. I'm always going on to my husband about, we don't have enough storage in this house. My husband puts a veto on buying more cupboards or putting more storage sense. He's like, more storage space, more shit.
Yeah.
I'm not having it. Sorry, that was a bit of a personal rant, but you know.
But why does everyone, because you talked about like we really are focused on the system that is, but everyone talks today about like supply chain as it has to be in Bangladesh, for instance. So why isn't every piece of garment produced in Great Britain in Great Britain? Because of what?
Yeah, so our manufacturing industry died because post-war in
because of
1946.
cost of labor, right?
Exactly.
So
and the industrial
when you talk about this recycling
process.
machine, that is what I'm criticizing. The reason we need a machine to recycle is because someone who really likes sewing and upcycling, who can have a little shop next to you and your husband, so you can go with all your clothes there. So when you're going to Spain, you can go to your local tailor and say, hi, I sew all my old dresses to Spanish team. And they do that, and you pay €50 and you go back home again. And then next time you're going to Brazil and you go to your tailor again and say, hi, can you do some Brazilian team? For sure. So you don't have to need to buy from Bangladesh, because production could be next to your home. But the only obstacle is that labor cost is too expensive in the Western world.
But I think then the other side of it is our global responsibility and making sure that a supplier like Bangladesh doesn't suddenly drop off the planet because the supply chain doesn't want it to manufacture anymore. So we have that dilemma of how do we start to transition a country like our supply, how do we transition our supply chain to come with us? We as a global economy invest in somewhere. Whose responsibility is it to invest in emerging nations like Bangladesh and make sure that they come with the industry and that they come with the consumer?
Yeah, but Lynn, the supply chain shouldn't produce waste or landfill. The supply chain should produce what's actually used.
Yeah.
So we can still have a supply chain, and factories in Bangladesh will do good, although we need to have the alternative in-house as well. And then we have the yin and yang. So we have both Greta Thunberg and Donald Trump, and then between them we have the solution, and that is self-consumption.
Yeah,
Henning,
thank you, Henning.
so much for that.
I just want to add with Henning, like as you were saying, like suddenly dropping searching from Bangladesh, that could not be an ethical and fair business solution from my point of view. So we cannot just simply put Bangladesh out of this business, because right now Bangladesh is the second global position supplier just up to China, and Bangladesh is supporting the global textile and fashion business just because of sustainability issue. And without supporting and collaborative support, we cannot take any kind of that kind of decision, because if we just drop Bangladesh, then what is the fault of those workers, the poor worker, those who are just struggling to just have their basic needs, and they're supporting the Western consumer, just sewing their dress back in Bangladesh, for example. So in my opinion, cost is a big barrier in implementing sustainable practice toward the supply chain. But if we can do a fair cost distribution of a particular product through the supply chain, like for a 100-pound jeans pant, then how much profit or the cost should go to the brand or retailers, how much should go to the supplier, how much to the policymaker or the clearing forwarding agency. So if we can provide solution of this fair cost distribution, then many of the sustainability challenges addressing would be possible.
So you mean that we should adapt the system for Great Britain, for instance, so we should plan, is this correct, how I understand it? We should plan how much land waste they get back so they could reuse it in Bangladesh to not decrease the jobs there?
if the plan is like that, to get back the waste there, and then there should have some proper management system. If we truly think about the circular system, for example,
but
then
I don't think we can. I don't think it will be good if we see Bangladesh, like workers in Bangladesh, as unable to come up with their own business ideas. Because if manufacturing slowly decreases there, I do think there is billions of business opportunities for every individual in Bangladesh. That is more fun than to be in a factory.
True.
And I do think they could sell services to the world in other ways.
True. And to be honest, I have almost 20 years experience with the Bangladesh industry, but manufacturers are really trying their level best to improve their sustainability issue with the global trend, or with the buyer or brand pressure, or the government pressure, or self-motivation, whatever. But it requires more and more, and then it's real collaborative support in terms of cost, technology, or whatever you say. So yeah, that's the key thing. I think together they can help this global fashion business to be more sustainable.
We should start in our wardrobes. And
actually, tomorrow there's an interview with the founder of an app called Save Your Wardrobe, and it's about that reflection of, okay, what do I own, and let's think twice if I need something else.
Is that Julia? Is that Hasna and Deirdre?
Hasna,
Deirdre?
yeah. So tomorrow we got Hasna, also Deirdre, and who else we have? We have so many speakers tomorrow. I think 8 different interviews, and the panel is amazing. We got Katia Balabanova, who actually did a research project with ASOS about how a marketing campaign on Instagram can backfire. I think it's really good.
Communication with the customer.
Yeah, so they used the hashtag, I think it was sustainability or sustainable fashion, and it backfired ASOS. So they research on Twitter and Instagram, I think it was, they research and follow that hashtag to see the impact. Really good. And
well, they did make their sustainability team redundant, so
that makes sense. But yeah, I think, well, it's been half an hour, maybe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for staying a little bit longer. It's great.
Same. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, everybody.
Really nice to meet you all. Helen, fantastic to see you, and I'm going to email you if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, everyone. That's really interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you.